how can we, yes, great. Glad to hear that announcement. I think, I'll take the liberty of declaring that the meeting has officially begun. And I'll bring people up to date, strangely, since I wasn't at the last meeting, but I'll bring people up to date who are listening as to developments at the last meeting, which I viewed on tape. Um, at the end of the last meeting, there was a discussion of the need for a chair, and maybe one or two other officials of this subcommittee. And Chaz very generously offered my name as the chair. I think there's a certain logic to it. I'm from the select board. This is the town subcommittee. I fully get that. What no one could know at the time was I have a 3-week period of absence from not just this subcommittee or Brookline, but from the US. My wife and I are going to be in Morocco for 2 Fridays at the end of November and 1 Friday at the beginning of December. So I think if people had known that, I wouldn't be the name offered to be the chair of this subcommittee. And I did hear that Jesse very generously offered to be the chair. Having listened to the last subcommittee meeting and got a sense of the really good contributions that several people have made during that meeting, I happen to agree with Jesse. I know that he's from the school committee, and it might raise questions for some people. Do we really want someone from the school committee being the chair of the town subcommittee? But Jesse stands on his record of his, not just as a school committee member, but as a town meeting member, being someone who's very fiscally prudent and very knowledgeable about how to conduct discussions, such as the discussions that will be consuming the time of this subcommittee. And if others have, opinions on this, of course they should offer them, and then we'll try to get done as quickly and smoothly as possible this business of choosing a chair for this subcommittee.
If Jesse is willing, I think he would be good unless we follow the time-honored tradition and appoint John Doggett, but I don't think John would want to do it.
I agree. I think he'd be fine.
Jesse, feel free to say no.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a reason I said yes the last time. There was a reason I offered last time because I felt I could contribute. So if the rest of the committee is okay with it, I'm happy to step up to do it.
Okay.
And by the way, I made sure that Chaz knew I was going to make this proposal. He and I had a very hurried conversation in the minutes just before this meeting began. So he's not going to be caught off guard by this.
Good.
And he'll be rejoining us shortly. So in my somewhat self-appointed role as the interim chair of this meeting, which I never really was voted chair by this committee. I think people need to know that, but somebody has to run this meeting at the beginning. Let's take a vote. Jesse, thank you for offering to put your name in nomination as chair. And I'm just going to call out people's names and ask for a yes or a no. Janet?
Yes.
And Ruth Ellen?
Yes.
And do we have any other people from the subcommittee here? I don't know.
John, but he's not present. John Doggett is
John's
absent.
not present. Yeah.
So he's not.
He's not present today. He's absent today.
Okay, he's going to be absent today. Well, and I vote yes. And Jesse, you have a vote.
I'll agree with that. Sure. Thank you.
Okay, that makes it unanimously. I'm handing over to you the figurative gavel.
Gavel. So does that mean I can stop typing the minutes in real time right now? Which is I'll hand them over to someone else, but I've got them already captured from the beginning till 9:09.
So you were designated as the person to record minutes at some point?
It looks like that's, I mean, I just saw it in the agenda just now. It says, what does it say? Let me bring up the agenda again. Open session chair. Question of electing a chair for the town subcommittee. So that we've taken care of. And minutes, question of approving the meeting minutes from October 17th. 3B, Jesse assigned to do meeting minutes for today, October 24th. So, that's, that's, we need to, I guess we need to decide. I'm happy to send what I just typed up to somebody else if someone's willing to do it. If not, I think what Nicole did last time is send me the AI transcription, and between that and my notes, I sent out the minutes within like 20 minutes after our last meeting, which is why we have the minutes now. All right, anyway, so we'll get there in a second. So thank you for all of you putting your support with me to help us move this forward. And I will endeavor to work diligently together with Chaz, Melissa, Lincoln from the town side to make sure that our town subcommittee comes up with a reasonable, believable, transparent, and solid set of recommendations together with all of us on the subcommittee. That being said, we're now at section 3, which were the minutes. So the minutes are in the agenda packet, and we'll move to 3A, the question of approving the meeting minutes from October 17th.
You need to call a roll, Jesse, unless you want a formal.
Well, yeah, I was gonna call the roll. I guess my first question was to give people a second to say yes or no if they had a chance to review them.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I'm happy.
I'm sorry if I may break in. I don't see, oh, I do see them. All right, now I see them. Okay. I don't know if I have a vote on this because I wasn't there. On the other hand, I have viewed the video, so I'll
Right.
leave it to others to decide if if my vote counts, but I'm going to abstain for now.
Okay. So minutes review, I'm just gonna keep typing along here. All right, so I'll do a roll call on if there's no discussion about the minutes. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
That was who? That was by Janet?
Yep.
Okay, and second
Second.
by Ruth? I'm just typing away here as we do this. All right, so we'll go around roll call. So John, you said abstention?
Abstain.
Okay, and Ruth Ellen
Yes.
and Janet,
Yes.
thank you. And Jesse's going to vote yes as well. So we have 3 yeses, no nos, one abstention. The minutes pass. Thank you. I hope you found them helpful. And I thank again Nicole for providing the AI transcription, which then I integrated with what I have here. Next item on the agenda then is as soon as I find it here. Here it is. It's 3B. Oh, Jesse Hefter assigned to do meeting minutes for today, already being done. 3C, assignments of minute note taker for the next meeting. Is there a volunteer to take minutes at our next meeting?
I will. Our next meeting or taking over for you now?
No. Well, either.
Okay.
The item in the agenda is for the next meeting. I'm already typing away here, and again, once we get to the other part of the meeting, let me just continue. If I find it's impossible, I'll hand it off for next meeting.
I'm willing to do it. We had said that we would rotate this.
Yes, we did.
It partly depends on the selection of meeting dates. That is, if we meet Friday and they have to be issued instantly, that would be difficult for me to do. So I'm hoping we come up with a calendar.
Yeah, I do not anticipate that the minutes have to be ready immediately after the meeting. I'm just, my own preference in the past is if I'm the minute taker is to take the minutes if I can during the meeting, clean them up and send them right out so I don't have to have it loom over me. Meetings happening. That's the only reason. Okay, so yeah, so Janet, I'll leave it to your judgment on that, and I put you down as to assign for the next meeting. Item 4, the meeting schedule, discuss a regular meeting cadence with the subcommittee. I imagine that also depends upon Chaz's and the town representatives' schedules. So I'm not sure if he's back yet or not because I'm typing over.
Here, yeah, sorry. Thank you for your patience.
All right, so we're at number 4A, Chaz, discussing a regular meeting cadence for the subcommittee. Ruth Ellen on 3C had agreed to take minutes for the next meeting, depending on the schedule. So
Oh, that was me, not Ruth Ellen.
Yeah.
Oh,
Janet,
sorry,
no.
Janet. Yeah, Janet, I'm sorry. Yeah. So
Okay.
Janet is meeting note taker for next meeting, and her ability to get she wanted to ascertain what the upcoming schedule was. So we were going to wait for you to join. If you're on now, maybe we can get to discussion 4A on setting up a regular meeting cadence.
That's great. I'm happy to work around the group's schedule. I want to hear from the group kind of is this a good time? Is Friday at 9 a good time?
Friday mornings is not the greatest time for me because I have a regular thing right after. Next week, if I'm calculating right, the earliest that we could meet would, I guess, be Tuesday afternoon, which is within the 48 hours. I am totally out of pocket on Wednesday. I can do Thursday morning, which is generally a better morning for me than Fridays. Thursday morning at 9 would work better.
I can do Thursday at 9 also next week.
I think I can do Thursdays at 9, barring surprises in my schedule.
Okay.
I can do Thursday at 9. Yeah, I'm looking at my calendar. That would be fine for me.
Okay, that seems to work
How
fairly
about
well.
you, Chaz?
Pulling my schedule now.
We have a check-in with the school department at 9:30, so
Oh, that's right. Of course. Which we just moved.
it's rescheduled.
We could do later if that works. It's just 9
Well, you know
seemed
what?
to work for
Let me
some
let
of
me
us.
let me see if I can push that to 10. Let me see if I can push the school department to 10 because that's for an hour. If not, we'll shorten it to an hour. We'll shorten it to 30 minutes. I mean,
That'd be good. Yeah, that's good.
So yeah,
I like
so I can do at least Thursday at 9. That's workable.
Okay. So okay.
Is that just next Thursday or is that going to be, we should set a regular schedule so that way I don't schedule something else.
And I just want to throw out there is 8:30, an alternative way of
On
doing this.
Thursdays, it's fine because they
Yeah.
don't have to be ready to zip
Yeah.
out the door.
we
You
can
would
do
it
it.
would
you
work
would
for
get
me.
me in the car for the first half hour. Sorry, I would be dropping my children off.
Oh, okay.
They
That's
don't
probably
drive
not good
yet.
then. No.
Let's keep it at 9 for now. At least Thursday the 31st of November. Sorry,
30th.
the 30th and the 6th. And see where
Yeah.
we go for the meeting set.
So-
That would be better.
10:30 and 11:06 at 9.
Okay, yeah, at 9 o'clock. Okay,
Yes.
let me go back and change this. Okay, that's fine.
So it'd be Thursday, October 3rd and November. Yeah, again, I'm typing it in the minutes right now. And November 6th.
And by the
Right.
way, I would be happy to do the minutes on November 6th.
I'll put that in now. Thank you.
Okay.
Jesse, if it helps you, I can take over the minute taking for this because I'm just jotting notes as we go. It's just not going to be there as fast as yours were.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'll stop and then
I mean, I have everything that we've done, which is,
I'm happy to send you what I wrote here. You can clean it up and send it out. Yeah, that's fine.
okay.
That's fine. Even for today's, I'll just send it to you. It's no big deal. Thank you. I'll email it to you, at the end of the meeting, and you can just follow from there. And then Nicole can send it to both of us if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll probably work on it early next week. So
Perfect.
no big
Yeah,
rush.
as long as we get it so that we can post it with the meeting for October.
Oh, it'll definitely be done Monday or Tuesday.
All right. Yeah, perfect. So you send it. I guess, Chaz, you just want to review what the process would be when she has the minutes ready. They get sent to you and Nicole.
And we'll we'll circulate them and load them in the packet, and then folks can review and have the opportunity to make any changes can go to Nicole and I, and we will go from there.
Perfect. And that'll be by Tuesday for the Thursday meeting.
Right.
Okay, Chaz? Okay, great.
Yeah, no, I'll get them out Monday. I just don't like to work weekends, but I could figure it out.
Not a problem. Thank you. So now we've addressed the meeting schedule, so we're up to the discussion section 5A, level services budget projection. It doesn't have a name on there, so Chaz, I'll hand it back to you.
So I have a brief slide deck that's going to outline the kind of next couple of items. The materials that underpin this document are going to be circulated to you likely over this weekend. The reason why I haven't circulated them yet is because, as I said last week, we need to have the discussion with departments, particularly around the cut list. And that's actually happening on Monday and Tuesday of next week. So we'll be able to have a more detailed discussion of what makes up some of the guts of what you're about to see on next Thursday, but I want to give you the initial sort of outline of where we are and where we think we're going. So let me share my screen with you. I'll start this slideshow.
And Janet, while he's starting that, I just shared my document of the minutes with
Yep.
you. So you'll see an email or something, click on it, it'll open, you'll have my session. Thank you. And if it doesn't work, let me know. Okay, we can see your,
Oh, sorry, Jeff. Here you
I'm just saying, we can see your screen now, level
go.
service.
Okay, good. Great. So, our projection of what a level services budget looks like in the coming couple years is largely unchanged from when we presented it to you late in the summer, which is to say we are projecting a modest revenue increase in the coming fiscal year, very modest, a 1.0% revenue increase, and an increase in expenditures of 3.7%. And again, this is keeping everything as it currently is, including the current allocations of the CIP, holding positions open in the police department, et cetera. If we were to transpose FY26 to FY27, we would have a gap of around $3.62 million to cover in FY27. And so you can see the big driver of this is that big jump in benefits. Benefits from 91 million to 99 million. Our debt service continues to weigh on us as well, moving up from 43 million to 49 million. We will continue to obviously make do with what we can. You can see the special appropriations drops. We anticipate a drop in free cash in FY27 just because the number of one-time things that we've been able to benefit from is not going to recur. We do anticipate still a relatively robust free cash number in the $15 to $17 million range, but not, a free cash number in the $23 to $25 million range, which you can see here is close to what we had in FY26. Some of that came out of the overlay, which for those of you who don't know, the overlay is the account that we keep in the event that we have to refund payments to taxpayers. And we saw a one-time dispersal of funds from the assessors there owing to a settlement of real property dispute with the cable companies. And so last year we were doubly benefited by one-time events, namely the overlay release of funds and the interest that we made off of our ARPA dollars. But now that those dollars are being spent down at a rapid clip, and there are no large-scale projects on the horizon that are going to inflate the CIP, we think we're going to float back down to earth and kind of be where we are in this. Recall again that the the Division of Local Services tells towns and cities that you should have free cash within 5 to 7% of your prior year's revenues. We are on track to meet that target for FY27, but it will be on the lower end of that. So still where we need to be for a AAA rated community, but on the lower end. Are there questions? Lincoln and Melissa are here. Are there questions, deep dives, things that people want to see more of in this document? Things that people want to take a deeper dive into in this document that we can pull information from for you?
Could I just add a couple of notes here before we open up to questions? I just want to clarify that the free cash number is low at this point because it's still based on an earlier estimate, and it's likely to go up, but it doesn't have an impact on the operating budget because we do not spend free cash on operating. So even if it does go up, the things on the expenditure side that would rise at the same level would be things like the CIP, putting money into our reserves and things like that. So it doesn't change the overall deficit position for the town.
Yeah, I can't see the other people in terms of calling on people because I can't see other pictures. Let me see where the other people are. No one else has their hand raised. Okay. A question about the benefits jump of $8 million. Is that under our control, or is that simply not in our control?
It really isn't in our control. That's the cost of doing business. Really, healthcare has posted double-digit increases for the last several years. We've gone around to other communities and asked them, and we're right at the median. Some communities, so there are two big consortiums of healthcare providers for municipal governments in Massachusetts. One is the GIC, which we're in. and the other is Maya, which is a different group. And the GIC communities are seeing an average of 14 to 16% growth in their health insurance costs. Maya is seeing more like 18 to 20. And communities that self-insure or are, have plans with local provider, just go directly with Blue Cross or directly with whatever Harvard Pilgrim is now. They are also seeing jumps in the 16 to 20% range. The only communities that I'm aware of that have been spared this health burden are communities that truly self-insure and small communities that self-insure, and their spending is always volatile, right? They pay out the claims as they get them, and they have a health insurance reserve fund to do that, and then they just hire a company to administer their benefits. And in those instances, some of those smaller communities, because the actual costs of healthcare for their workforce has been fortunately low, they haven't seen as much of an increase. But there, you're really rolling the dice, right? The whole point of being in a risk pool is that you standardize your risk and you lower the chances that if one person winds up needing $1 million plus worth of care, that you blow your budget and aren't able to provide those services. So
On the debt service side, it jumps 6 million to next year and then becomes almost flat for the next 4 years. What's the reason for the big jump to 27?
So that's directly related to the debt exclusions, that essentially you'll see the growth in the property taxes. Part of that is debt exclusion related, and then the other part of that follows on the debt service side. So another round for Pierce, another round for the fire stations, and then that's expected to level off in a couple of years. We don't have any other anticipated debt exclusions coming online.
Right. Okay.
Quick question, Chaz. What is Maya? Can you spell it out for me for the minutes?
MAIA, Massachusetts Association of Insurance. I'll get you the
That's fine. The MAIA will work. I just wasn't sure
You
what
can Google
vowel
it,
went
yeah.
in there.
And just
What
another note on the group health piece is that this isn't from a September projection. We have since met with our group health consultant who has advised us that the 10% that we're holding as an assumption should be 12%. I've also done a scrubbing of the database for group health that I normally do in October once school enrollment has settled. So the shortfall that I'm seeing from what I have in the current slide that you see is about another 904,000 that needs to be added to the group health as a result of those two adjustments.
you mean it's going to go up about another 900,000?
Yes. So essentially, the group health is going up by over $5 million and pensions
Right.
are going up almost $3 million. So that pretty much consumes most of the growth that we're seeing in revenue.
And the group health is inside the non-departmental benefits, Melissa?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. On the special appropriations line, it looks like, a big drop for 27, and then essentially a decline projected over the next 4 years. I guess, why the 5 million drop? How do we justify the 5 million drop? And then what's the long term? What's the strategy behind showing a $1 to $2 million drop per year after that?
So the special appropriations is directly corresponding to the free cash projection. So to the extent that the cash, we're basically being conservative on the free cash so that we don't, put projects forward that we think, may or may not happen. We're, more conservative in what we're planning for. But traditionally, we've had higher free cash numbers in the upcoming year. So we know that likely will change. But as I said before, that is not an operating budget piece. That is directly related to the CIP.
But if I may jump in with a question there, so what kinds of things were we enabled to do in the current budget that we won't be enabled to do in capital projects I'm talking about?
So I think that we have a number of areas that I have seen pretty robust funding, whether it be building maintenance. We've been able to, provide a lot of, elevator work and roof and masonry work and deferred maintenance work. And then also we've been, bumping up roadway work as well. So to the extent that our free cash number is lower, or to the extent that we are kind of revisiting our policies around what we are providing to the CIP, those are the items that likely would be reduced.
And if I may, just one more question. So it's great to catch up with deferred maintenance, and I'm worried that now we're going to be back into a cycle of deferred maintenance. And would this be an area ripe for, if we're going to do an override question, we need a more robust capital improvements budget, and that's what should go on an override.
So I think that's one of the questions we're putting in front of the committee is that we, in fiscal 26, we reduced the level of operating funds that are going to the CIP. I think we have a question of whether or not that should continue because that does provide operating relief. And then also Chaz has a recommendation around roadways because we've seen inflation kind of gobble up the capacity that we were able to bring to that account.
So, I mean, does that mean that transportation is being instructed to simplify or find efficiencies, Chaz, in terms of
We
ongoing
actually,
planning?
yes, we actually this year we redid our roadway policy to focus our energy on getting bad roads repaired quicker, and not as heavy a focus on complete streets or shifts from multimodal transportation and so forth. So now there are two separate programs, whereas there used to be one. There is a program for large arterial streets and other streets that may benefit from redesign, looking at those streets and thinking about how they might be designed. But the pavement management plan is now quite different. It now focuses really on wear and tear, use of the streets. It has an algorithm in place, and you can see in the FY26 budget, which we're currently in, there's a list, what streets are going to get redone. And it's much longer than it used to be, which is good. But even so, as Melissa said, with inflation, that only gets us so far.
I think that would be from a I think a citizenry perspective, Chaz, having this pavement management plan out in front of people, either through Brookline News or through your newsletter, town administrator newsletter would be hugely important.
Absolutely.
Because people don't see a lot of things happening, but to know that we've pivoted to a pavement management plan that is trying to do the most with the limited funds that we have would go a long way, I think, in not necessarily calming people down, but at least let them know that it's being managed, it's under control type of thing, right? So that would be great. I think that would be helpful either through your newsletter or Brookline News article or something like that.
Happy to highlight that. Yeah.
Yeah,
If I may,
agree. That's good.
Just to jump in with a further question, Chaz, and whoever else might want to contribute, is there any way of establishing that's understandable to the public what is the right amount of road maintenance to do in any given year, so that we can say we're doing as much as Newton or not as much as Newton or Needham, but the right amount to do in terms of standards in the industry is X,
Mm-hmm. So again, it depends, right? I think that's a complex question. What is the right amount to do? On the one hand, it can be quite simple. You have that graph that Aaron has regularly showed to the community, which talks about there are 5 different levels of funding. Here's what happens if you fund it at the middle, your roadways stay the same. They don't get any better. They don't get any worse. Here's what happens if you fund it below, and here's what happens if you fund it above. Right now that break-even number is around $8.3 million, and we fund the roadway account right around $6 million now. So we are, and again, that number was quite different in 2022 in the last override when we put $2 million into the roadway account. I'm glad that we did that because otherwise we would be in a really dire position. But the fact of the matter is the cost has gone up so dramatically that now just to maintain the roads that we have costs more than what we're able to put into that account. And so are we doing all we can? Yes. But when you dollar for dollar across on average, what you're looking at is a roadway system that is going to slowly get worse in the absence of additional funds. And so being able to get us up to that line or close to that line is really critical.
Is
And
it-
a follow-up, do we measure ourselves against other communities in terms of what we spend per, you know, per foot or, you know, whatever, per, you know, quarter mile, when we do streets?
We haven't historically, but I don't think that information would be difficult for us to pull. We can do some digging there.
Is it,
Great.
is it a definition of selective maintenance? I mean, does that, uh, is that important to, for people, you know, for residents to know that it is selective maintenance and it's not done on a problem by problem basis?
I mean, certainly, right, there are emergency repairs that happen all the time,
Sure.
but right. There is, we actually have a pretty complex algorithm that we use to determine the life, the quality of the pavement and the life of the road based
Mhm.
on, what does it look like now? How many cars do we know go down it? When was it last paved? All of that stuff. Is relevant in determining the score that it then gets assigned in the pavement management plan. And so, yeah, in throughout the pavement management plan, you see, yes, we will, there are a couple of roads out there that are worse off technically than some of the roads that we're paving, but they may be
Mhm.
lesser used, they may be,
Right.
and that's
Right.
why so yeah, it's not always just, oh, the worst road gets the
Right.
paving. It's,
Yeah, you know, some minimum definition of that, I think would be helpful for people, for residents to understand that it's, you know, it's not, we don't wait until the last minute to do the worst roads, et cetera. And I don't know the definition, but I think that that would be helpful um, for residents to understand, frankly.
what I will
think
do is
that
after,
the more information people have, the better they are. Whether or not they acknowledge it is
Right.
another thing. I would say my own personal survey of our roads, over the last 10 years or so that I've paid attention to town politics. I used to live in Newton, and I considered they had an awful lot of what I call milkshake roads. The roads were in such poor quality when you drove over them, you were bouncing up and down. That has increased in Brookline. I live off Parkman Street, which used to be pristine. It isn't anymore. And I can tell you all of the DPW stuff has degraded, particularly since Aaron lost staff. This is not a blame thing. It's an observation. The snow isn't cleared as clean. We know that there are issues with all kinds of things. But I don't think comparing ourselves to others matters, because what matters to the electorate or to the voter or just to the citizen resident is what's happening outside my door. So when I read about what's going on in South Brookline, I just look away because I don't go to South Brookline, but I can tell you what's happening right around Coolidge Corner. So get it out there. It gives them a rationale. The rational people will accept a rationale, and other people will just say, but my street isn't paved.
I don't disagree.
So, which, oh, excuse me.
do we lose you, Jesse?
No,
Yeah,
I'm
looks
back.
like-
I got interrupted. So, I guess, the transportation side seems to be an important concept. I mean, something we're gonna come back to. Who would be the right contact on the transportation side if we wanted either to invite them to an upcoming meeting to give us a short review? Who is that? Dan Murphy?
Yeah, Aaron and Dan Murphy.
Aaron.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, yeah, so,
We're
Yeah.
happy to do that. Yeah.
yeah, it might be helpful. So it's certainly not the most critical element of the entire aim of our town subcommittee, but it is something that the population of the town is quite concerned about. And just for my understanding, this all comes out of the special appropriations line in the budget you're showing?
No, so some of it so the special appropriations definitely funds, a portion of it. That's why we're able to get up to 6 million. But
Okay.
some of that is departmental funding.
All right. Are there any other questions from the rest of the committee about the level services budget at this time? Will this be available as a in the agenda packet so that we can study it a
Yep.
little afterwards too?
And I apologize. I've had sick kids at home and myself. I have also been a little
Yep.
under the weather, so I will endeavor to. But yes, the underlying materials here will be available to the public and to you. And I will also follow up with I'm taking notes on what else we need to follow up with. For example, the payment management plan we will circulate.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to keep us to 10 o'clock. So let's pace ourselves, Chaz, in terms of the other 3 items in there.
So let's move accordingly.
Yeah.
So
Let me tell you, this is very good detail to have, and thank you for the team for putting it together.
yeah, and Melissa and Charlie do such a huge amount of work here on
Yeah,
this.
100%. I didn't want to mention any names because I was afraid I might leave someone out. That's why I just said
No,
that.
of course. So, right, this is the overview of the cut list and where we are, and I will send you the details of this, and we can talk about it more in public once the departments have been briefed on Monday and Tuesday.
Sure.
Even in a scenario in which an override is passed, I am looking at cutting up to $1.825 million from the town side of the budget. Given the needs and the reality of how much we can expect to ask of the voters, we need to make some cuts no matter what. And it's just the unfortunate reality of the situation. The biggest single cut here is the one that Melissa talked about, which is reducing the policy that reduces the CIP contribution from 6.6% down to 6%. That is a relatively recent change. And so undoing that change nets some relief to both the schools and the town, but it tightens the CIP considerably. I asked what 5.5 looks like, and even though that gives us some more, it really starts to put fundamental pressures on the CIP to a point where I don't know if that's where we want to go. So that 6%, that 0.6% drop nets on the town side around $877,000 on the operating side of the budget. For the schools, obviously, it's a little more. So that goes a long way, but there are the practical trade-offs there are ones that we will need to consider in some detail. $411,000 in personnel. That's 5 full-time employees. Of those 5 full-time employees, 3 of them would be cuts, and 2 of them would be moving their lines to other sources of revenue. We have revenue, for example, in the health department and in the rec department that is not operating revenue that I don't like putting lines on for obvious reasons. It's not always as reliable, but under the circumstances and given the balance of issues, I would be willing in this instance to move 2 of those lines onto funds that are not general fund. $362,000 in non-personnel cuts. This is programming. This is, the nuts and bolts of what we do. One of the things that I think is really important to highlight, and I highlighted this last time, and I'm happy to do in more detail, is sometimes people talk about how much money does the town spend on new ideas, new plans, just stop doing new planning, cut the new plans and the money for consultants. The actual amount of money we spend on consultants for planning and new things from the operating budget is very low. It's like $180,000. So that's like the old saw about cutting foreign aid in the federal budget, where it's like 1% of the federal budget. But people see it happening and they think, well, that must be a lot of money. It's not a lot of money, and the amount of money we get in return for our investment is pretty significant. So this is not new planning necessarily. What this is kind of across the board, reducing budgets in the departments that would be used for things like consulting services or training or any number of other things. Not ideal. Belt tightening is very tough in an environment where we already asked the departments last year to undertake a pretty significant round of belt tightening. But where we can squeeze out around $362,000 in non-personnel cuts. Level funding OPEBs gets us $100,000. Our policy was to increase that by $100,000 every year. So If we level fund it, that puts $100,000 back into the operating budget. And then from the 5 FTEs that we cut, you get around $75,000 in benefits. So that brings you around $1.8 million. We are still working on the what happens if there's no override. To get there to that $3.6 million gap. We're at 18 FTEs and counting. The programs that are on the block include the farmers market, the arts council. We're talking programs that have high visibility, unfortunately, and that are really considered great parts of the community.
Right.
We would see significant impact to the building department and parks operations. We would likely lose inspectional services, capacity and inspectional services, and maintenance at a time where there's a desire to see us increase our operations and maintenance and parks, particularly, and management of the tree protection bylaw and so forth. We would be going in the opposite direction, and we're still $1 million away. So we're continuing to puzzle on that and trying to figure out what we can do. But it's a grim list, and it's only it's still $1 million short.
How much of what you're cutting from never got restored after COVID?
So we have actualized all of our COVID cuts, except the 6 police officers. So everything that we cut from COVID is not still hanging around in the budget in a phantom way.
That wasn't my question.
Oh, I'm
It
sorry.
was, did we get restored? Because this is something that Erin talks about, that I didn't get all those positions back. So that gets
That's
us to where we're maintaining at below where we were. And now without an override, we're looking at making that even deeper. And that is something, if you ask me, what does the community care about? It's those last 2 items, the visible things, and my parks and my roads and the buildings, especially with what was just in Brookline.News about Vernon Street. We want, people need to understand, I think, that we're already operating in a worse place. And our best case scenario isn't going to get us back to where we used to be when people complained a little bit less. I don't think people ever stopped complaining altogether.
So I could just say that, not everything was fully restored from COVID because we also hit a high inflation environment immediately afterwards.
Right.
So, it's been very, very difficult to, try and add things to the budget. We've really just been in a posture of trying to preserve what we do have.
John,
Right. And I think it would be helpful in our report to maybe dig into that a little bit deeper so that people have a better understanding, that we at this point are starting from not last year, but maybe, 2019, I think was the last good year. Not in tremendous detail, but enough so that people really, really, really understand the situation.
John?
Thanks. So I'm finding kind of a disconnect here. Because at the last meeting, which as I say, I viewed the video of it, so it's still fresh in my mind. I seem to recall that the override scenario is primarily going to be driven by the cost of fire department overtime.
Correct.
And yet the scenario, if there is a rejection of the override, doesn't really say anything about the fire department.
It doesn't. And you're not wrong. We've talked about minimum staffing, and minimum staffing was not accepted by the community as an alternate option. Theoretically, that could go back on the table, but again, that's not something that, we agreed with the union that we weren't going to do that. And so the alternatives are layoffs, right? Reducing services. And that's something where we have to have a conversation with the chief about the overall operations. You may recall when we had that discussion about minimum staffing, Chief Sullivan talked about Chief Ware in the past saying, I'd rather close a company than reduce minimum staffing. Well, we may be there. We may be at a point where we close a company. And so, but we have not made any firm decisions on that front. it is, the single largest driver on this potential override is fire. And so some of these cuts are on the fire side. But the big question would be staffing, and that question of, do you close a company, or do you institute mandatory brownouts where after a certain number of people call in sick, you shut a company down for the day? Those are the big questions. And so that's not in here yet, because that's a very fraught policy decision, that we need to have a strong conversation about. But at the margins, it cuts to non-fire prevention services are on the table for the fire department.
Yeah,
Would it-
I think this gets to a fundamental question about overrides, which is, maybe unanswerable. Do you put your most essential services on the override ballot in the expectation that they would be most likely to get a positive vote, or without there being a clear scenario as to what would it mean if it's rejected? What does it mean if the public is given the option of supporting, the underfunding of the fire department override with a substantial infusion of money, overtime, with a substantial infusion of money for overtime, and then or do you put on the ballot the dispensable things that you think the public would agree maybe we can do without this? But the message has to be consistent. I think that if you're going to put fire department monies on the ballot and then the public says no, that maybe that means they've decided our fire department is kind of overly expensive compared to other fire departments.
I think that
So
that
why
is
should we be penalizing the farmers market? Because after the public said no to an override for the fire department.
I think that is a fundamental question about how these things are packaged. There's the bigger question that you've identified. Is it better to sell a positive override? Look at the things we can do versus a negative override. Look what happens if you don't do it. And I think sometimes that's a little of column A and a little of column B. And then, what are the consequences? Are the consequences proportional to the drivers of the cost? And on the one hand, yes, you want some proportionality there. And on the other hand, community, when polled, has said over and over again that the number one thing they like in this town and that they want is public safety. And so if we have to make cuts elsewhere in order to fund the public safety budget, maybe that's what we have to do. And so it's not.
Is it possible to do both? For example, is it possible to say, vote for scenario A or scenario B or neither? So, scenario A is, that we solve the gap in the budget by putting fire department overtime at risk, and letting the public decide whether we should support the full funding of the fire department, including the overtime. And scenario B would be, alternatively, do we put, the Arts Council, the farmers market, it's 18 positions in departments other than the fire department at risk? And do we choose that? Or do we say, we don't like either of these scenarios? So I don't have an answer to that question. I just think it might be an approach that helps us to be consistent with, if you, the public, say no to A, B, C, and D, then those things won't be funded. Not if you say no to the fire department, then we're going to cut all kinds of things in other departments. I think the public finds that inconsistent.
And that's a good point. What you're describing, John, is more of a cafeteria style override. And that is actually the work we're asking our Harvard Kennedy School students to work on right now, is to analyze what, the pros and cons of that structure. Historically, we have done all or nothing overrides,
Right.
one question, all that, but other communities do put several questions on the ballot.
Well, it's not, I'm not sure I understood John's question, Chaz, as a cafeteria style. I heard more of a let's go, an itemization. It could be a single question with an itemization so that the public's clear that if you vote not to do this, all these things will disappear. And if you vote to do this, these things will continue, rather than saying we're going to have like 6 questions there so people can choose what they want to do to fund programs that they, like more or like less, or feel are more important or less important. Those are 2 different approaches to take. We'll see what the students come up with as a, as
Yeah.
in their report. Can you go back 1 slide for a second? Did your level service budget also include the school side or just the town side? I just wanted to double check. I think it was just
Includes an estimation on how much the schools are going to increase to 148 million there.
That's like
okay,
too
6.
low. That's like, we need an updated projection from the schools. We've been waiting.
Of course. Yeah. And I'm not really even asking, Melissa, with like my school committee hat on. I mean, that's a Bella thing, not a Jesse thing. So, and I'm on finance too, but that's okay. I mean, we're all working for the same goals here. So, 6, and then you're showing like 7 to 4 to, okay. So some different variations. I don't know how the variations show up if I get asked, on the other side of where you're projecting the schools out to 2031, but at least I see the numbers now. And so that was the bottom line there, Melissa, the 7.4 million. That's what I thought I saw it before. I just wanted to double check. So that's where the 11 million comes from. Okay. So it's the same story, I guess, like to what John was saying, which is that we'd have to, on the school subcommittee, would have to come up with some, plan, strategy, not necessarily a narrative to the community. That's another group I've been told is going to work on that, but at least within the school subcommittee, they need to determine how to address, at least for 27, what looks like a $7 million shortfall. Okay. All right. I got it. All right. If there are no other questions, let's keep going.
We have been talking about how to increase revenue. In the summer, I gave you a big long list of potential revenue things that only added up to around $600,000, of which most of which came from putting lights on the golf course, which wouldn't go to the general fund anyway, but would free up some money in rec. This does not assume lights on the golf course or how much money that would save us ultimately with rec maneuvering. That process, that theoretical construct is now in progress, where the Parks and Rec Commission is having discussions. There was a public hearing. It's a great opportunity. Obviously, there's a lot of community demand there, but it's not realistically, it doesn't have the impact on the bottom line of the budget that we would want it to have. Certainly not something we could rely on for the purposes of an override or talking about an override. So what we're talking about here is an increase in the building fees, an increase in street opening permit fees, the tax demand fee, parking violations, ZBA and preservation hearing fees, rental fees from the building department, and the false alarm fire alarm increase. A lot of these things are things we haven't dug into for many years. For example, our parking violations we haven't dug into for a long time. We now, for all these ones that say TBC, the departments are now conducting an analysis to figure out what the increase in revenue might be for this. So these are low estimates, but you could see that even if those are low, we're not talking about a life-saving amount of money. It's not nothing. $312,000 is a good amount of money. It does go some distance towards solving this problem.
Just excuse me for asking, but what does the C stand for in that TBC?
Oh, Department of Planning and Community Development.
Oh, no, to be continued is TBC.
Oh, TBC, to be confirmed.
Oh, to be confirmed.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, the departments love me. I have all sorts of theater reference. I put TK and John, from journalism, to come.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
That's where we are on the revenues. And this is the most recent version of potential override requests, where we are and where we're getting to. So we have continuity of service, right? Closing that level services gap. Now, you may notice that the amount I've allotted here, around $1.8 million, is higher than the amount that you would get if you took the no override cutless scenario 1.8 and this money. That's a little higher than that. And the reason for that is because there's going to be growth in that over any particular 3-year period in the override. And so before we start structuring out a 3-year override, I just wanted to be clear that ultimately the ask is going to be higher than what the initial cuts in FY27 are able to cover. So that's where that $1.8 billion comes from. To fund the new fire contracts beginning in FY20, at the end of FY27, will cost $910,000. We are regularly posting overtime overages in the fire department of $800,000. That's where the estimates are, and so that would be close the gap there. There are currently 6 police officers that are positions that are held open in order to fund the current contract. This would restore those. In DPW, we initially talked about sustainability as the biggest driver here. And as part of the discussions in other contexts, I really wanted to focus our energy on not just sustainability, but some of the other unfunded mandates in DPW, tree protection being one of them, the general upkeep and maintenance of parks and open space being another, especially as we're having this conversation about Clark Road, adding more open space to DPW's portfolio means you need more money to care for it. And so that analysis, Aaron's analysis.
I'm sorry, what's the reference to Clark Road? I didn't catch it.
So when the Maimonides primary school was sold.
Oh, the 2
Yeah.
Clark Road building. Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yeah. There's
Sorry.
discussion about having one of those parcels potentially be preserved as open space.
Oh, okay, I did. Okay, thank you.
So all of that kind of adds up. In Aaron's budget, it would be around $800,000. Funding some of that would go a long way towards alleviating some of the stuff that Janet was talking about in terms of the restrictions that have come on DPW. Operating adjustments for the police department. The police department needs to shift off of its system of record. Larimore is getting older and is not well supported anymore. But the cost of that is going to be tremendous, both in terms of the initial outlay and overarching maintenance and upkeep. There also needs to be a realignment of the command staff salary now that the new contract is in force. The gap between a lieutenant and a deputy superintendent is very small, and that discourages people from seeking promotion, which is not what we want. So we need to analyze that. There are 5 command staff positions plus the chief. The chief's contract is up in March. There's going to be an increase in that cost. So all of those things fold into the police department operating adjustments. And then the last thing on this list is the senior center transportation program, which we've heard quite a bit about from members of the public. Right now, senior center, the medical trips program from the senior center is funded on an ARPA line. It's the biggest operating funded the biggest operation that we fund on an ARPA line currently. And that will expire. And once that expires, we will be back down to a much more limited capacity for medical transit and other things that we provide to senior citizens. The cost of maintaining that program is around $300,000. And so adding that money to the senior center's budget for that work. That puts the total at around $5.31 million. What I have done in terms of figuring out what this base number looks like is I took the 2022-23 override, which allotted $4.995 million to the town and ran it through an inflation calculator, and that gets you to around $5.31 million. So it would be the same ask adjusted for inflation for this base override.
Sorry.
Then you talk about.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just wondering again, not to go down a rabbit hole for more than 30 seconds here, but on fire overtime adjustments of $800,000 at even $100 an hour, I don't think they're probably making that. If they make $100 an hour for overtime, that's 8,000 hours in 1 year.
So
of,
that's
of
yeah. I
time.
mean,
And if they're making less than that, then that's even more, like 10,000 hours. I mean, it just seems incredibly high.
It is incredibly high. Charlie, if you want to share the memo with that you shared with advisory with this subcommittee, I think that would be helpful to talk about the sources of this. But to your point, Jesse, sometimes there are a number of reasons for why this is where this is, and one of them is unfortunately the fact that in the late 2010s, there was an adjustment to the how we conducted fire operations, and we did not adjust our overtime budget at the same time. And that meant that that budget was underfunded by a set amount, and that underfunding grew. In general, fire departments can expect to spend 10 to 15% of their operating budget on overtime. That's just how it works, as I understand it, in Massachusetts. And so we're below that, or we're I don't know, Charlie, where are we right now? We're like,
But wait a minute, regardless of what it was in any budget year, when the next year rolls around, it's a new budget. So if we were historically underfunded, it just means we couldn't pay for the overtime. Or are you saying that we borrowed from the future to pay the bills in the prior year?
we,
Is
well,
it
we
is
didn't borrow.
this all revolving now? I mean, again, I don't want to go
No,
too deep on
we didn't borrow from the future.
but
We borrowed from other sources of revenue where we could, other line items in the budget in order to
okay,
make
so
it
again, so
balance.
that's in the same budget year. So again, I fail to understand why 8,000 hours, let's just say, is bigger than just the current year in which it's in, because the money is only budgeted, annually.
That is a one fiscal year's worth
Right.
of overtime overages.
Right, right.
Yes.
It just seems incredibly large. I mean, for not a very big department.
If,
So
if I understand Chaz correctly, what's going through my head is it's similar to what happened on the school side with the funding of special ed, particularly the kids who were sent out of district, where there was this huge jump to get it to this is what we haven't done. In past years, that's come out of the reserve fund. I don't know if it's been changed in my history. It's about $2 million set aside for what we didn't expect to happen, which usually means snow removal. And if
right, but that's in the same year, Janet. That means
Um,
less snow removal, more out of district tuition payment, so that at the end of the year, things get paid. I'm okay with that. I'm just concerned that annually we continue to cycle at this like $800,000 for overtime. I mean, to me, it's not even that important whether or not it compares to other communities. Just could just be a behavior pattern that, like in Brookline, we need to do something about. I just, to me, it's seems
if I
very, very large.
if I understand it, the number has every single year the budget has not shown this amount. And what Chaz is trying to do is say we need to put it in the budget, which again I considered sounded to me like what Dr. Gibbons did in saying we never put this in the budget. Now it's in the budget. In order to do it, the town side needs. We've been lying to ourselves over the years about what that overtime number is going to be. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
That's accurate.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, on the expectation that there will be reserve fund transfers,
Exactly.
to cover it at the end of the year. Which it kind of begs the question, what's wrong with continuing that pattern as long as we generously fund the reserve fund?
Right.
The reserve fund is for unexpected or extraordinary expenses. And last year, the advisory committee told us in no uncertain terms that this year should be the last year we come to them for fire overtime.
Okay. Okay.
And
No,
even that was a stretch.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, again, I guess, so that sort of answers my question. It's allotted, divided by 365 days, you get about $2,000 a day divided by 21
I'm sorry to
hours.
interrupt you, Jesse, but you have to factor in the reality that each overtime shift is 24 hours.
So they get paid 24 times the hourly rate.
Well, they get paid 1.5 times the hourly rate for
Per hourly rate.
24 hours.
Got it.
So, if I could, my audio wasn't working, so I wasn't able to jump in. The high level, bullet point version of what's going on with fire overtime is that it is driven by leave. So when firefighters take leave, and the number of firefighters taking leave is over a certain amount, the fire chief has to call people in for overtime, right?
Yes.
And so it's driven by different categories of leave. One of the major categories of leave that has skyrocketed in the past several years is injured on duty leave.
Yes.
Now, if you review the memo that I sent around to advisory about a month ago, and we can circulate it to the subcommittee, you'll note that injury leave has at different times been very high. But several years ago, we decided to start granting 5 vacation or personal days every day. And at that time, injury leave was relatively low. And now injury leave is up over, I think it's 15 cases right now, and it was 21 cases in 2021. When you have 20 people out and then you're granting 5 vacation days every day, you are doing between 5 and sometimes 12 overtime shifts a day.
Right.
And each overtime shift is very expensive because it is a 24-hour shift at a time and a half rate. They're doing, at least 23 overtime tours per firefighter every year, and there's 130, right? So in other words, you can think of it in terms of hours. It's easier to think of it in terms of tours. And the problem that we have is we have been for the past few years uncertain whether this level of injured on duty leave and other leave, also being high, by the way, according to the memo, would be a consistent thing every year. And we've been bringing updates to advisory committee, and they're saying to us, this seems pretty consistent. And so the question now, building this into the override, is whether or not the town is going to acknowledge this as normal, and build it into the budget going forward. That's the question. So, and if anyone wants to have offline conversations about fire overtime, we've gone through this extensively at advisory and with select board, and we can talk about it and provide any backup you need.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
I do
thanks.
apologize. I do have a 10 o'clock meeting
Yes,
that I
yes.
want to run to, but
Yes. Was there one more item on the list of the 4? I think that was the end.
Yeah.
No request. Yes. Okay, good. Okay. So
the
we are,
backup data for this will be circulated early
Perfect.
next week. Any question, and the opportunity for follow-up questions and discussions on that front is on Thursday. So whatever thoughts you have, we have a list of things that you've asked for from this discussion. We will pull together additional materials and continue to have that conversation on Thursday.
right, Chaz, thank you. We will get the minutes ready and send to you in time. If there's any work you need me to do as now voted in as the chair to help set the agenda, please let me know, and I'll happy to work with you. Okay.
Thank you. I'll circle back with you. I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
I look forward to reading Charlie's memo.
Yeah.
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 Very
We'd like
So
to get
these are
that as
helpful.
well.
It's
Thank you.
exciting
Interesting
stuff.
reading.
I assure you.
I'm sure. Yeah, definitely keep us up at night. That's for sure. I thank everybody for their time, and if the subcommittee will entertain a motion to end the meeting now, we'll adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank
As
you.
well.
Thanks.
Gorgeous day.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.